Addio, mia bella Napoli. Addio.
Benvenuti and ciao ragazzi to the 29th episode of In the Shadow of Vesuvio. I'm Henry Bell. I'm in the west of Scotland, feeling a bit sad, as I'm sure everybody listening to this is. We have Michele Borelli in Naples, who I think is even worse than me. Michele, how the hell are you doing today?
I'm not doing I'm not doing good, my friend. This is not the best of days, let's say. Which is a shame because the weather is quite nice actually. There's a very bright sun, the temperature is perfect. It would be the perfect day to celebrate a huge victory. But that
Mm,
didn't happen, did it? So
no, even here the sun is out. The end of Romeo and Juliet. What's the line? The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Well, the sun is showing its head. But the line after that is go hence to have more talk of these sad things. So I think that's what we're going to be doing today, listeners. We're going to be talking about sad things. Yeah. So before we talk about number 29 in the Napoli Tombola, there might be some people who specifically downloaded this pod to hear about what happened in the stadium yesterday. I think it's quite important from the offset that Michele, you're not an ultra, are you?
no, I'm not an ultras, no.
No.
What gave it away?
Well, I think we'll discover in a second. But you do go to Curva B every home game. So anyone that's new to the show, I'm in Scotland, but Michele's in Naples, and that's our vibe. And so the whole reason of this show was that we would have the kind of in Naples experience of what's going on.
Yeah.
Today is that day. So anyway.
Yeah, it's no, I'm not. I go like not everyone in Curva B is an ultras. People believe sometimes that if you go to Curva B or Curva A, you are someone who belongs to the ultras groups. That's not true. Like the vast majority of people who go to both Curva stands are normal people, are people like me, people who are happy to chant along, but people who do not belong to the ultras groups. I would say that probably the ultras are about not even 10% of the whole capacity of the curva section. So yeah, the vast majority is normal people who get involved with the chants and everything else, but they are just normal people, not ultras, nothing to do with ultras.
There we go. Fact bombs already arriving. Just a few minutes in. So what we usually do is at the beginning of the show, I ask Michele what number the episode is in the Napoli Tombola, which is a game that's been played in Naples for a very long time. I don't think it's ever been as relevant as it is now. So Michele, could you tell me what number 29 is in the Napoli Tombola?
Yes, so as we said in the last episode, we are going through three numbers now, starting the last episode, which are quite dirty, which we love. It's a little bit of a shame, but it is still appropriate that today's number 29, is in Napolitan, it's called O Padre del Creatura, which in Italian would be Il Padre dei Bambini, and in English it would be the Father of the Children. Now, Father of the Children is a little bit of a metaphor here because we are not really talking about a person. We're talking about genitalia.
A body part.
Yes, body parts. So number 29 is penis. Yeah, which is indeed father of the children, metaphorically speaking, but also physically speaking in a way.
And perhaps in the context of today, we're going to be talking about a group of people perhaps don't have that body part in the traditional area and may find it sort of closer to their eyes, perhaps in their forehead,
yes,
than the usual. But spoiler alert. So yeah, you're probably listening to this feeling a bit depressed, everybody. Napoli lost 4-0 at home to Milan. But today we're going to be concentrating, like we always do, on what it was like in the stadium. And obviously there was a lot of issues in the stadium from the ultras, and particularly in Curva B, where you were, Michele. How should we do this? Like, what happened?
I think it's better to do this chronologically a little bit and give some backgrounds first, because this is not something which just happened in the stadium. This is something that has been going on for years now. This is nothing new. This is not something that happened for the first time yesterday. Unfortunately, this has been happening for a long time and for many reasons. So let's give some background first so people understand the context of it. Okay, so the Ultras and De Laurentiis don't like each other. So that's the first element you need to keep in mind. They have their reasons, and I think they are good reasons for the most part on both sides. So the Ultras have not liked De Laurentiis for a long time because basically, well, they they feel like the club belongs to them. There are many reasons. I don't want to make it too simplistic. So there are many reasons the Ultras don't like De Laurentiis, and there are many reasons why De Laurentiis doesn't like the Ultras.
And we've spoken about some of these things, haven't we? In the past?
Yeah. We did it in the past. It's just that it's a little bit hard to give specific reasons. There are some specific reasons this time around, and they even mentioned them in their statements. But in general, for the sake of background, let's say that De Laurentiis and the Ultras are not two sides which like to compromise. Let's say that. They both want to have their ways, and they don't like to compromise. This is important because this kind of explains why probably this situation, this problem will never be solved ultimately. They both want control, and they both want control on their section. Basically, De Laurentiis wants control on the stadium because he feels like it's his stadium, even though it's not, technically speaking. But on the match day, it is, because it's his event, so he can basically dictate the rules. So he wants the stadium the way he wants the stadium. He's been talking for years about how he wants a stadium which is like the English model. He keeps talking about the English model, the US model, which are, I mean, you can tell me what they are like because you live there. You live in Scotland. You are from
Disneyland.
There,
Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of modern. It's like they're going to a theme park, and some people like that, and it's considered to be more family friendly and all that kind of stuff. Again, there's arguments for and against it. It is a very different. There's a thing that really struck me when I was in Naples last year was how different that game day experience was actually. How much less corporate it was, and how Anyway.
Yeah. So
So
De Laurentiis has been talking for years about how, like, even once he said, "I want a stadium with 20,000 seats, no curva, armchairs, and families." That's what he said. And like, you know how De Laurentiis is. Like, he talks a lot and sometimes he just talks shit. But I do think that he actually, like, his ultimate, it's not possible to do that, but his ultimate goal, if he had his ways, would be exactly what he said. So like a very small stadium with very high prices and families. For some reason, he keeps mentioning families, even though, like, if you increase the price, it's not really possible to bring in families. But he keeps talking about the English model, which in his mind, in his opinion, is a model where profits are at their maximum and where you have complete control over the whole stadium. So people sit in their seats. There are no flags. There are no people who, go beyond the rules. Let's say he always talks about the rules. So that's what he wants. And the problem is that the Ultras go in the exact opposite direction. So by definition, the Ultras can't really be controlled. Otherwise, they are not Ultras. It's like organized, like the definition would be organized groups of fans. The problem is that if De Laurentiis has his ways, the Ultras stop existing completely. Because, for example, this is something that happened a couple of years ago. It's not happening anymore, but this is something that happened a couple of years ago that basically De Laurentiis and the police, so they always work together because obviously the rules are enforced by the police, but he makes the rules for the most part. So for a few months, a couple of years ago, he decided that people had to sit in their seats. Like, you get a ticket, you have a seat number written on the ticket, and you in theory, by law, you have to sit there. This happens in all the sections in the stadium except the curva sections. Why? Because obviously, if you want to support if you want to create chants, if you want to wave the flags, and if you want to create some kind of involvement and chants and just organized support, you cannot sit in your seats because you have to sit in the middle of the section altogether. As it happens in all the stadiums everywhere in Europe, everywhere in Italy where the same laws apply. The ultras, regardless of the seats written on their tickets, sit together. They aggregate together in the middle of the section because that's where it is easier to launch the chants, right? That's where it is easier. Like it would be stupid to expect the ultras to sit in their seats or like in the side of the curva. That doesn't make any sense. So
Exactly.
it is always been the case that regardless of the seats in the curva, you just go and sit wherever, because this helps, the involvement, this helps the chanting and everything else. So
just to pause on this, because I think this is a really important point, and a lot of people who are sort of casual followers of Serie A will often ask, why aren't the stadiums full all the time? It's often because the ultra groups and the owners, not just in Naples, but other clubs, other cities, are in dispute, usually about things like this. And often the reason why stadiums aren't full and the disputes are actually about being able to create the atmosphere that is, what the league was so famous for back in the day. So I think that's a really good example of that. And yes, so there's historic issues here between these two very stubborn groups of people.
Yes. So coming to yesterday, well, I mean, obviously the seats were eventually solved. They had some kind of deal with the police and De Laurentiis, so at least that rule is not enforced anymore. But some other problems remained. So coming to yesterday, so we all know what happened. So in the recent past, what happened against the Roma fans. So there have been like huge clashes on the biggest motorway in Italy, which is the A1, the motorway which connects Napoli to Milan. There had been some problems with so basically there have been some clashes in Tuscany between Napoli Ultras and Roma Ultras going to away games. So they met in a autogrill, basically in like a truck stop, or how do you call it, in Tuscany, and they clashed like heavily. Service station, yes.
It was really embarrassing for the club. It was embarrassing for the league. I really thought it was very silly. The whole thing was ridiculous.
For the whole country. It was embarrassing for the whole country. Like the government got involved.
It was front page news, actually, wasn't it? It was over all the news websites. Yeah.
Exactly. So there was a big deal. There had been, as I said, there had been problems even before, but there was kind of like a point of no return, because after that, a lot of fans got banned. That's normal procedure. That's totally fine. I agree with that. Obviously, you can get involved in this kind of fights and not have any repercussions. So there is a measure in Italy which is called DASPO. I don't know if it exists in other countries too, but DASPO is a police measure in Italy which basically punishes people for sport-related crimes. So if you get involved in some kind of sport, like usually it's applied to football. So if you get involved in some kind of football-related crime, stadium-related crime, you get this DASPO immediately. So you don't have to go through a judge or anything, I don't think, because like they literally give it to you a day after, the
on the spot sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So the DASPO is basically a ban from the stadium for a certain number of years. Usually it's like 2 or 5, 3 years, something like that. And you are not allowed to get tickets anymore. As we all know, or you may not know, that tickets in Italy are customized with the person's name. So you cannot go to the stadium unless you have the name on your ticket. And if you are blacklisted, you can get the ticket in your name. So the system blocks the request. And not even that, it is mandatory for people who receive this DASPO measure to go to the police station during home games, and sign there. So basically, it's a way to
Oh wow.
yeah, it's a way to just block these people from going to the stadium at all. If you don't go to the police station and sign a paper saying, yes, I was here this time, this day during home games, then obviously
So
it
it's a bit like
becomes,
probation. Like you
yeah,
have to
exactly, it
sign.
becomes
Yeah.
much, much worse. But yeah, it prevents people from going to the stadium by banning these people from getting tickets and by obviously physically forcing these people to go somewhere else while the game is on. So a lot of people, a lot of ultras who got involved in these fights got DASPO in January, but it wasn't just that. So not everyone know. I think a lot of people, even in Napoli, don't know what happened after that, because even the people who didn't get banned, even the people who didn't get the DASPO, they kind of got punished. And this is the main problem that the ultras are fighting now. This is the main problem they are trying to protest against. So the police knows the name of the groups who were involved in the fights. Even though those people, like not everyone got involved in the fights, they know the groups, the name of the
So it's
group.
kind of like a subgroup of the ultras, and let's
Exactly,
say like
exactly.
that subgroup has 20 people in it, and there were 5 that were at the motorway, and there were 15 that actually were home that day.
Yes.
But they know those subgroups, right?
Exactly. And to be precise, I mean, I don't want to name the groups because, I mean, what's the point? But yeah, Curva B is divided into a few groups, ultras groups, and only one of them goes to the away section, the away games, because to go to the away games in Italy, you have to have some kind of government fan card. Like people believe it's a Napoli fidelity card. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
It's just called a fidelity card, but it's actually a government card, which allows fans to go to away games when they are restricted. The ultras everywhere in Italy, the ultras have been protesting against these cards forever, for 15 years now, because they believe it is not right to be forced to subscribe to a government card just to attend a football game. It's a protest which has been going on for years and years and years now. This is the reason why the Curva B ultras don't have this card. All the ultras except one group. And that is the groups which obviously goes to away games. This is a new thing. This is only from this year. They decided to subscribe because they wanted to go to away games. On the other hand, everyone in Curva A, meaning the ultras, have the fan card, this card. Yep. So they also go to the away games. So what happened after those clashes is that the police decided to punish these groups, the away-going groups, even though they didn't participate as a whole in these clashes. So from that moment on, which was at the beginning of January, these groups were not allowed to bring banners, they were not allowed to bring flags, and they were not allowed to bring drums and the megaphones inside the stadium.
Yep.
And only them. This is, a way to basically, because they have the rules. There are some rules in the stadium that all the banners, all the flags, all the drums have to be preemptively authorized. So they have to request authorization to bring them inside. No one really does that. Like everywhere in Italy, no one really does that because, come on, it's just a flag. It's just a banner. You really have to, come on. The police decided after that they have to require authorization basically, and they can reject, they can refuse to give authorization to bring in the
Napoli, Glasgow, for example. Napoli, Glasgow, Curva G has a flag, a Scottish flag with Napoli, Glasgow written in the middle of it, which may or may not have been smuggled into the stadium recently. So yes, I have lived experience of this very issue.
Yes, so we haven't had drums in Curva, well, in the whole stadium now, because there was only one group bringing the drum inside the stadium, and it was the group which was involved in the clashes in January. So we haven't had drums in Curva B since January, since the Juve game, basically. We haven't had drum flags anymore. Like sometimes, like for the most part, now it involves everyone. But at the beginning, only this group was not allowed to bring in flags and banners. So if you see the pictures of Curva B before and after January, you will see a big gap in between, like in the middle of the section where the Ultras banner was there. This is the banner of the group which was banned, which got dashboard. So Yes, we haven't had megaphones. We haven't had drums inside the stadium for a long time
So
now, and
what's
this
that
is
got to do with De Laurentiis?
because this is the police doing, but it's also De Laurentiis doing. De
So he's
Laurentiis,
kind of said that that's fine and we're going to go along with it.
yeah, no, he loves that. Yeah, he likes that. He said that many times that he doesn't want people sitting in the front seats. He doesn't want people. He wants families. He doesn't want violent people inside the stadium. He's just generalizes a lot the problem with the ultras. And
So for me, it's very interesting that you've led with this because a lot of the people, I think, outside of Naples, think that this is a dispute about ticket prices, which makes more sense to me because we talked before about the difference in average earnings and all that kind of stuff in Naples in comparison to other parts of Italy, and looking at some of the sort of eye-watering ticket prices for coming up for the Champions League. It's like 90 euros, isn't it, to get into the Curva? Like,
yes,
you know, if you want to bring your family to the game, like that's not affordable, is it? Is that part of what they were protesting about as well?
yes, that too.
Okay, cool.
That too is part of the, like there's a bigger picture. Obviously, there are many problems. This is a more complex issue that people make it out to be. People just think, yeah, they want to be criminals, or the people tend to simplify this problem, but it's not as that simple. And I think the truth lies in the middle a little bit. So yeah, about yesterday, yeah, these problems since January have been going on. The protests of the ultras has been quite strong since January. They haven't stopped chanting except yesterday.
Okay. And so this relates to, there was a statement, wasn't there, from the ultra groups, which came out, I think, midweek, didn't it? So we had some knowledge that this was going to happen. And I think this is where I start to lose support for this, because I think, and we're going to talk about what happened in the game as well. It's fair enough having a grievance, but it's also about how you express that grievance, particularly in a game of the importance of yesterday.
Yes.
So in that statement, right, they said that they will not be cheering at all during the game, which is a tactic that ultra groups do employ. I experienced it myself in person when I was there last year, when you got told off for chanting and I was stood next to you. Which seemed to me a relatively heated discussion, but apparently it wasn't. It was just a difference of opinion expressed with lots of hand gestures and things like that. And that is how people communicate often in Italy and in Naples. But yeah, so was there anything else in that statement that you think is important that people know about?
Yeah, no, the statement was quite important because it marked a precise point in the trust protest. So there have been softer protests going on since January, but yesterday they wanted to make a statement, and they did make a statement. And this statement was specifically about the ticket prices. Again, it is in the context of this ultras repression going on since January, but specifically yesterday was mostly about ticket prices. So they said, as you mentioned, Napoli has set very high ticket prices for the Champions League quarterfinals game against Milan. Curva tickets will cost 90 euros, which is a steep increase, a 50% increase in price compared to the Frankfurt games, which was already very expensive. The ultras in their statement kind of made fun of De Laurentiis, who gave an interview last week about this problem, about the ultras problem. He actually said that he doesn't want the ultras in the stadium. He said that he wants a stadium full of families. And the ultras made fun of these words because they said, you want a stadium full of families, but then you set prices at 90 euros. So it's just for rich families. I mean, can we disagree with that? I don't think so. They're right.
No,
because
absolutely.
it's like you want people, you want families in the stadium, but Napoli has no discounts for children for this game, and like for most games. The only discounts Napoli gives for children are discounts which are mandatory by law. And even those, Napoli was forced to give, because Napoli refused to give these discounts until a father of a 13 years old sued Napoli because of this. And he actually won the suit. And Napoli was forced to refund this guy for all the tickets he paid for his under 14 years old child. And after that, Napoli was forced to give this discount for all 14 years old in specific games in the league. So
I paid €20 for the last game of the season last year. And the last game of the season is a big deal. It's usually, and I was in Curva. So that's a massive increase, €70 increase on what I paid last year. Yeah.
No,
I think most people listening will be like, absolutely fair enough. That isn't really on. But anyway, so what happened? So you turned up. What was the atmosphere like beforehand? Could you sense there was great tension? Could you sense that bad things were going to happen before the game?
Yeah, so before the game, the trust. So the way they decided to protest was, we will aggregate before the game outside the stadium, in this big square outside the stadium. We will chant for we will wave our flags. We will chant freely for a few hours, just to show what we are capable of, and just to make a statement. And the way they decided to protest was doing this and then going inside the stadium, because they actually had the tickets for today's game, and stay silent inside the stadium. So that's what they decided. So they actually what they did. So I wasn't there. I was in the square, but I was close to it. So I saw some smoke flares and smoke bombs and flares, and I saw some videos. So they actually did. It was quite nice. That's a very peaceful protest that way. You chant outside the stadium, totally fine. You go inside the stadium and stay silent. That's still peaceful. I disagree with that, but they can do whatever they want. I mean, it's their choice. I disagree with that, but it's their choice.
You couldn't sense then that there was that sort of feeling that something was going to kick off before the game. For you, it seemed fairly ultra protest classic sort of, people are chanting.
I think what happened inside the stadium is what they plan to do inside the stadium is fairly normal. This is something that has happened unfortunately a few times in the past 2 or 3 years, as I said. So just going inside and not chanting at all, it is unfortunately normal. Not maybe for not this season, because fortunately it hasn't been the case this season. But yeah, I mean, in the past 2-3 years, this has happened a few times. So I think this is what was planned. They went inside without flags, without banners, and they didn't do anything. They didn't chant at all at the beginning. Then, unfortunately, what started to happen was that they decided to chant, but not for the team, against De Laurentiis. So they chanted a few chants against De Laurentiis, very insulting chants. Nothing that big, just like son of a bitch, this kind of stuff.
See, I'm just gonna. We got a tweet in about this from Halfie, who we were asking what they thought about what happened yesterday. Halfie says the spectacle of ultras beating the hell out of each other and scaring regular people away, let alone chanting ADL Filio di P, was disgusting. Never seen anything like this. Also masochistic. They were booed by the entire stadium. They actually cheered Milan chants against ADL. So there's a couple of things going on there, but that makes reference to what you were just saying, the kind of chants against ADL that were coming from the Tifosi in the Curva. Yeah,
it is quite important to say that the rest of the stadium actually booed these chants. I understand, I understand why they would boo them. And I also don't think it was appropriate to chant these chants, regardless of your stance against or pro De Laurentiis. I honestly don't get why you would say we will go inside the stadium and not chant, and then you chant, but just against the owner. Just stay silent. That's my take. But anyway, what happened was that, yes, they decided to chant and everything else. At one point, fairly early during the game, some chaos started to erupt in the middle of the Curva. So it's important to say that this is not planned. It's not something that obviously they plan to do. I think their plan was to go inside, do a couple of chants against De Laurentiis, and that's it. What I could see from my position is that people started to argue a lot after this chance. So after a few chants against De Laurentiis, right in the middle of the Curva B, some people started to argue verbally at the beginning. And then it escalated into a physical fight.
And who were the people arguing, do you think, or could you tell?
That's the point. I've heard a few people speculating about yes, the ultras are censoring normal fans, and the ultras were fighting against normal fans who wanted to chant. From what I could see, I couldn't say who was involved. I could just see the position of the fights, and the fights were right in the middle of the curva, and we know who sits in the middle of the curva. So people saying, "Oh
And
yes,
who?
the
Sorry, just for
ultras."
those of people listening who don't know 100%. So in the middle of the curve is where the kind of ultras are,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
mentioned before, the
Yeah.
middle of the curva is for the groups. So
Mm.
I've read a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, the ultras were fighting against normal fans who wanted to chant." You can say that. This is not. I don't think anyone can say that, because I don't think this was the case. This is my opinion. Obviously, we don't know the facts, but based on the position and based on some rumors I heard yesterday, inside the curva, this was not a fight between ultras and normal fans. These were fights between ultras groups, different ultras groups. This is not something that has happened for the first time. This is something that happened even in Frankfurt. I think we all saw the videos of ultras fighting in the away section in Frankfurt. And what I've heard was that this was between the same groups. I don't know why. I can speculate. I can make an informed guess about what happened yesterday.
But from your perspective in the curva, you saw it happening right in the middle. I just want to bring in someone else who tweeted us at Shadow of Vesuvio, Jay Casano, supporter of the show.
Yes.
Top fellow
Hi, Jay.
on Twitter.
Yes, I gave him tickets yesterday. Hi, Jay.
Jay just says that this isn't a question, but just wanted to share that I was in the tribuna right next to the away section. Other fans were complaining and annoyed about the curva preventing others from starting chants. Curva B definitely doesn't have most people's support. Then Jay says it was shameful how the curva let yesterday feel like a Milan home match. Red flares added insult to injury. We'll get there in a second. I'm sure someone else has a better shot of how the away section was full of flags and no Napoli flags anywhere. And Jay's actually, there are two fantastic photographs from the stadium. So please do check out our Twitter page to see that. So it does seem that the rest of the stadium was getting really irritated by what was happening. Who it was happening between, we don't know. It would seem, because of the location of it in the Curva, that it was probably ultra squabbles, but it had a major impact, didn't it, on the atmosphere of the game. Tom Cowley, hi Tom, asks, how much do you think the atmosphere with the ultras protest played a part in the performance last night? So what would you say, Michele?
I don't know. Just it felt very negative from the beginning, and I don't know how much it impacts the players, but it is worth noticing that we lost 2 games, home games this season, and these were the only 2 home games where the ultras didn't chant. So maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it isn't, but that's what happened.
Well, I'm going to say, yeah. So Payman Dadjiga, who is a prolific tweeter, hey Payman, wants us to talk about the sporting aspect. Now, what I'll say to you, Payman, is that I don't think the two things are separate. I think they are one and the same. So, he correctly points out we've lost to 3 out of 5 top teams in 2023. And even against Roma, we were a bit lucky. But as you correctly point out, Michele, quite a lot of those games involved these ultra protests. So, we can't prove that there's a correlation or a connection there, but it's an interesting pattern that's emerging, right?
Yes. I mean, we can just judge by the results, because as I said, we lost both games where the ultras didn't chant for different reasons, actually. And I'm going to say something else which might be worry a little bit, but yeah. And we can judge the Spalletti's words. Spalletti in the press conference said that the lack of support from the Curva sections is as bad as the Osimhen absence on the pitch. That's what he said. So whether it was, just generic talk or it was something that he actually believes, he actually said these words. And I mean, I don't know, like I don't like, we have to be in the mind of the players to know if it has an impact or not. But I want to say something else. We already know that they will not come in for the Milan game. So, and this is not a protest, actually. This is because for the Milan game and for the Lazio game, the government card, the Napoli Fidelity card, was mandatory to get tickets. So, as I just explained, the majority of these groups don't have the fan card, so they didn't get tickets for the game, so they will not go inside. So the Curva B will most likely stay silent unless the only group which has the cards will be active, but I don't think it will.
And this is for the away game?
No, this is for the home game.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
So you need that card for the... Oh, okay.
Yeah, they made it mandatory for the home game too now. For this game at least. So, it was quite bad yesterday. The fight was absolutely shameful. About the tweet you read before, the ultras were not... so I don't sit exactly in the middle of the curva, but I sit to the side of the ultras group. So I had some ultras right like 1 meter away from me, literally. And there were some like organic chants starting in the curva. Not a lot, just like 3 or 4 coming from normal fans because of the other ultras, the ultras stay silent. I could not see the ultras telling fans not to chant. So this is not true. I don't think this has happened. Okay. The curva chanted, like even normal chants, even stupid chants sometimes, I have to be honest. But there were a few chants starting from normal fans. I could not see ultras kind of censoring these chants.
What about the end of the game? So you talked about the game and that there was the fights and then there was the lack of chanting, but then there was also this period of chanting against ADL, which probably triggered some intra-ultra fighting, which was picked up on. We talked about the general lack of atmosphere and lack of support for the team. So what happened at the end? Because we see these kind of red flares get set off in the curva, which are obviously the colours of AC Milan. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not.
That's a coincidence.
What happened after the game?
Well, I mean, during the game, obviously, as I said, we had the big fight, and it was right in the middle of the curva. Some people got confused because they thought that it was part of the protest because they left a big part of the middle of the curva empty, and people thought it was, the ultras making the statement by leaving their seats empty. That is not what happened. I was looking at it quite closely. So they left the middle part empty because people ran away from the fight. That's what happened. Okay. They just ran away, so.
In the words of Falstaff in Henry IV, Part 1, can honor set a leg? No. He famously fakes his own death during a battle. So I'm with those people that run away.
Yeah,
just
because,
run away.
It's also important to say that this fight did not involve hundreds of people. It was literally, from what I could see, like 6 or 7 people involved in this fight. Not more.
You don't want to get caught up in that. Yeah.
Exactly. So everyone else just left. It was quite a harsh fight. People were fighting with belts. But again, it was only like fewer than 10 people fighting right in the middle of the curva. After a while, people got inside again, and that was fine. But yeah, I mean, the whole first half and second half, people just there was the occasional chant against De Laurentiis. Quite sad to see, and at the 80th minute, a lot of people came. This was organized, I think. This was planned from the beginning. So a few people with their faces covered got inside the curva, lit up some flares, and they just started the chants against De Laurentiis again, and they threw the flares on the running track, basically. My opinion was that, I think, maybe not, but my opinion was that they were maybe trying to get the game to be stopped. Maybe not, because, again, they threw the flares inside the arena, let's say, but not on the pitch, obviously.
Yep.
It is important to know that the flares are not allowed anymore. Like, you see flares everywhere, like in Rome, in Milan, everywhere. But in Napoli, again, megaphones, not allowed. Drums, not allowed. Flares, not allowed. If you lit up a flare, you get banned from the stadium.
So that's interesting. So it's an important, there is a meaning behind that object that goes beyond, the thing itself.
There was a statement saying like, oh, you don't want me to bring the flares inside? So look, I did it anyway. And they did a big show of it. just a big fu to the police and to De Laurentiis banning this kind of flares and megaphones and everything else. So quite sad to see. It is said that something I was talking with some friends yesterday while this was happening, the flares and everything, and they told me something which actually made me think, because lighting up 5 or 6 flares yesterday was a huge deal. People got shocked. They were like, wow, the flares, what's happening? This was actually the norm until 5 or 6 years ago. Flares during a game, this is not that big of a deal. Just a flare. It's not something like it's not harmful, and now it's a big deal. It's kind of This is where the point where we reached lately in the stadium.
Well,
library Maradona. So it's quite sad to see.
I teach a class about how theatre is a sign system, about semiotics, about the meaning behind objects. And yes, this is perhaps a good example I can use in my next class. I just want to bring in Sam. She's she's a long time listener. She's always tweeting in. She's at Va Bene Escorda. And I think Sam's got some pretty strong opinions. Sam's usually quite a chilled out person into Neapolitan music and stuff, but she says sorting things out is not the ultras mandate. Bullies are going to bully. Actions of a few drag this phenomenal city down and mar the beauty of historic moments for the Napoli club, who will put on their big boy pants to address the unchecked ugliness that has been given far too much space to grow. There we go. So I'm interested, Michele, so you've gone through it in a very factual, balanced way. What do you think about this?
So I do think that I kind of stand in the middle of this. So I don't think the ultras are completely wrong, but I also don't think De Laurentiis is completely wrong. But I want to answer to this tweet and to a lot of people saying, oh yeah, the ultras are shameful and they should support the team and they should chant for the team. I just want to say, if De Laurentiis had his way, the ultras would not be in the stadium at all. So you would have the same result if De Laurentiis had his ways. So no chance at all, no flags, no drum, not nothing. So for me, the truth kind of lays in the middle. So the ultras, as I said, do have a point, because it is incredible. Like in the same stadium, you have some fans with drums, flags, and flares and everything. We saw that against Lazio. We saw that yesterday against Milan. They are allowed to bring anything inside. They don't check. They don't care. They had drums, but they were the only fans with drums in our stadium, in Napoli's home stadium. And we are not allowed to bring in drums. And when I say we, I mean not we ultras, because I'm not an ultras. As I said, we Napoli fans, because the drum is not just an ultras tool. It's a tool which serves the purpose of involving everyone in the curva and in the stadium for chants for the team. So when people are quick to judge the ultras for their protest, think about that. Is it right that in Rome, in Florence, in Milan, they can bring in flags, they can bring in megaphones, drums, flares, and in Napoli is basically the only place, the only stadium where we are not allowed to bring any of this stuff? Is it correct? Isn't good? Do you agree with this? Because I don't. It's incredible. It's crazy.
And the away fans can in the stadium, right?
The away fans can, because I guess they don't care. It's just they are just trying to punish the Napoli ultras for some reason. We don't know why. Obviously, De Laurentiis has a big role in it, because De Laurentiis can tell the police, let's say, like he can guide the police in a way. He can incentivize the police to do their job, let's say. So this is.
But how did you feel yesterday in the stadium, Michele?
Depressed. I think, in my opinion, it was the lowest point for me ever since going to the stadium. I've been thinking about it. It was just too depressed. If you ask me how were Milan's goals or what happened on the pitch, I have no idea. I removed everything about it. I honestly can't remember a single goal. And they scored a few goals right in front of me. So
Yeah.
I honestly can't tell you what the goals were like. I removed all of it. I couldn't get into the game whatsoever. There was too much stuff going on. I don't go to the stadium to necessarily watch the game. I do watch the game, obviously. I'm a big Napoli fan, so I want Napoli to win. But the reason why I go to Curva B and not the Distinti, or the reason why I go to the stadium at all, and I don't watch the games at home or in a pub, is because I want to get involved. I want to do my part. And yesterday, I couldn't do my part. I couldn't chant. I couldn't do anything. And this is not just because of the ultras. It is way too simple to say, oh, yes, the ultras decided to not to chant and they took away their support from the team. It is true because that was their choice, but it's not that simple, because if they didn't process, if De Laurentiis had his ways again, the trust wouldn't be inside the stadium at all, and the stadium would be like yesterday all the time, all the time. So you can't just say to the trust, go inside and chant, go inside and do what you have to do, because they can't, because they are not put in a position to do that. Because one day you remove a drum, the next day you remove the megaphone, the next day you remove the flags. So when do you draw the line? You have to draw the line at some point, right? And they drew the line yesterday. Again, if it were up to me, I would chant regardless, because that's the protest. You don't want me to chant? You are taking away from me the tools which I use to chant and support the team. I don't care. I will chant even louder. That's the way I would protest, and then obviously something else outside the stadium. What I would do if I were in their place would be to involve the normal fans in this protest, because this is where the ultras are wrong all the time. This is what they don't understand. They cannot be alone in this fight, because this is a fight which affects every one of us. We all want a loud stadium. It is too easy to say fuck the ultras and then have in your Twitter bio a picture of the flares outside the stadium, or a picture of the choreography in Curva B and Curva A. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a picture of the choreographies from the ultras in Curva B and then say fuck the ultras at the same time.
It's having your cake and eating it. That's what it's. Yeah, exactly.
This is something I saw today from I don't know. I can't remember the Twitter account, but someone criticizing the ultras, and then I go on his Twitter profile and he has a picture of the flares outside the stadium, which is kind of like an ultras choreography. So what, you praise the ultras on your Twitter profile, and then you you say on your tweets that you don't like them and you hate them and they are the scum of the earth. You can have it both ways.
And I'm a member of a union, and I've been involved in industrial action over the past 3-4 years against the UK government. I'm a university lecturer. And solidarity is so important. Like collective action is about solidarity, and that's what I found so depressing about yesterday, was the infighting. And actually, if it is as you suspect within the ultras, then that's even worse. I think you're so right, Michele. I think that what we need is a sense of collective here. If the fan base can unite and actually find a way of expressing what seems like a really silly dispute to be happening in this wonderful season, and for there to be some kind of compromise reached here, I think that's important. But at the moment, look at fired out a tweet a few hours ago. People are already pointing fingers and fighting within themselves, and that's not going to create an atmosphere that's going to get us to that S word. And it's interesting, a lot of people have been asking about whether this season's going to help that relationship between ADL and the fans, recover. Well, I think we saw yesterday that actually it's had the opposite effect. It's actually brought some of these things right to the front at just the wrong moment in the season. I want to move to our Neapolitan expression now, and then we'll have an opportunity just for some closing thoughts on your opinion, Michele. So what Neapolitan expression have you chosen, which I believe is always slightly relevant to this situation?
Yeah, so the phrase of the week is related to what I just said right now. So as I said, I agree with the the point they're trying to make, your trust. I don't agree with what they're doing to make this point. I don't agree about the silence. I don't agree about the fights they're having. Obviously, I don't agree about the insulting chants against De Laurentiis. You may dislike or like De Laurentiis, but I don't think chanting, like in a otherwise silent night, the only chants are against the owner. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. So the phrase of the week reflects that. The phrase of the week is ricetto parrocchiano, fai quello che ti dico io e non quello che faccio io. Which in Italian would be disse il prete, fa quel che dico ma non ciò che faccio. I think it's probably an English phrase too, quite common. In English, it would be the priest said, "Do what I say, but not what I do." So,
yeah.
so this is about again the ultras protest and the compromise, like you said, which has to be reached, because I don't think they are completely right, but they're also not completely wrong. Because obviously, I mean, why do you fight on the motorway against Roma fans? Of course, this has to have some kind of consequence. Of course, they're gonna do something. They cannot let it slide. It is funny that Roma ultras had no consequences whatsoever. They are still allowed to bring in flags and drums and everything else. Because this is only about Napoli fans.
Believable.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with what they say, and as I said, this is, I think, on paper, I think we can all agree with that. Like, why are we the only stadium where drums are not allowed? Drums. Has a drum ever killed anyone? I don't think so. So this is completely stupid. If you complain about the lack of support in the stadium, you have to take it with the police and with De Laurentiis too. You can't have it both ways, because De Laurentiis is killing the
But the methods.
organized. Yes, exactly. He is his choice.
But the
And they're
methods that
right.
the ultras are doing. So I love this idea that it should be more chanting rather than less that protests this.
That's just my opinion. So the problem is that, yes, the ultras say the right things, but then do the wrong things. Because, as I said, I think one of the solutions would be to unite behind this protest, but in a peaceful way. We can all agree that we want the drums and we want the flags, we want the colors and everything. But the ultras don't make it easy to stand behind them, because the way the ultras behave in the stadium, and it's always been this way, and it's like this everywhere in Italy and probably the world, they think they are the owners of the Curva. And I hate that. I don't agree with that. This is shameful. And this is obviously, this doesn't help their case, because if you want support from the normal fans, you can't behave like you are the owner of the chance. You can behave like you're the owner of the Curva. Yesterday, nothing bad happened against normal fans, but it has happened in the past. Like you were a direct witness of what happened last year, right? Like this
I was.
Last year, again, not going to the details, but basically Curva B split in two halves, and one half was chanting some chants, and the other half was chanting other chants. And I made the mistake of chanting chants of the wrong side of the Curva, and one ultras from the side where we were on came to me, not in a menacing way, he didn't threaten me, but he just explained to me vehemently that I was chanting the wrong chants. And again, I want to stay objective, but do you remember what happened after that? Do you remember what happened after the guy came to me and kind of like verbally, violently in a way, explained to me that I wasn't supposed to chant those chants? Everywhere around us, people turned to me and asked me what happened, and they condemned the ultras in general. This is something people don't understand, and this is something that ultras don't understand. You have to have the normal fans on your side. And this is not something they do. This is not something they try to achieve. They actually insult normal fans all the time, because they think they're above them. they think they're above normal fans because they go to all the games, because they are the real fans. And this is something, as you know, as our regular listeners know,
Yeah.
I am vehemently against this. There are no top fans, or low fans, normal fans, super fans. We are all the same. We all support the same damn team. So
Yeah. And so let's do it
unfortunately,
together.
yes, when you start taking side, when you trust start saying, "Oh, we are the real fans," fuck you, because you were not here yesterday for Napoli, Verona or something like the Leicester team. We're here when Napoli was in Serie C, in Serie B. Where were you? We are the real fans, and you are not. You start to divide the fans, and this has been going on for so many years that people think that the ultras are something external. The ultras are something that doesn't belong. There are people often associate ultras with criminals. They're not completely wrong. Most of the time, it has been proved that some ultras groups have ties with the organized crime. So I guess, I mean, they are not right. They're not wrong with that. But
Not
you have
all
to
of them.
yeah, not all of them, first of all, but you have to also divide, again, they can be criminals, but if they're right, they're right in a way, like they're not right about their criminal ways. But if a criminal says, I want, like, why are we the only fan base which is not allowed to bring drums inside the stadium? Their point is a fair point. Like, okay, maybe it comes from the mouth of a criminal or not. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it is a fair point, and I think we can stay behind. We can all agree with that because we all want the drums inside the stadium. So that's what's been happening. That's what happened yesterday. That's what's been happening for the past few months, and this is something which will keep happening in the future because I don't think what happened yesterday will help at all. Obviously, they gave a lot of reasons for the police and De Laurentiis to punish them even more.
And to dig their heels in,
yeah.
What we need is, well, Michele, thank you so much. I know you were very keen to get this done as soon as possible, so you could really. But I think you've also really helped paint the picture of the broader context about what's been going on. I'm just going to want to, a plea for solidarity within the tifosi of Napoli, whether you're an ultra or you're not, whether you're in Italy or you're not. You can't affect change if you're fighting within yourself. And that's the first thing that happens in any kind of dispute, is that the people try to divide the people who are trying to change something. It's like the absolute first thing that happens. And it's really important to find that sort of collective solidarity. So, and I'm sure people are going to have their opinions and it's good, but before you send out that tweet, just think, what can I do to help build some bridges here to actually make sure that the facts behind this dispute are being presented? And you don't have to condone their behavior, of course.
No,
but
I don't.
This will stop when the thing is sorted out. So let's think how we can sort it out, I think. Great. And thanks to everyone for the tweets. So we're at Shadow of Vesuvio. Michele, do you feel a bit better now? Got us off your chest? Or
I don't know. Not really. It's just depressing to think that it's gonna stay this way for a long time. I don't see any solution inside, As you said, we should be looking for a compromise. And the compromise, in my opinion, is De Laurentiis and the police allows the ultras to bring in everything they want, which is not dangerous, obviously. And they allow us to support the team like everyone else in Italy does. Everyone else in Italy does. And the ultras on their end have to agree to stop the violence, not inside the stadium. Usually, I mean, violence inside the stadium never happens. Yesterday, that's why it was so shocking yesterday, because it never takes place usually. It's never the case. But, like clashes against fans, against the Frankfurt fans, against the Roma fans, we don't want to see that. Really, come on, Jesus. Like, this is like 80s ultras culture. Let's put this behind us. They always chant about putting the shirt first. I don't see that. Honestly, that's my problem with ultras yesterday. You chant about, they are literally chants about always being with the club, always being with the team and the players and the shirt. And then, there's a little bit of an asterisk after that. Always, except if we don't feel like it. So, I mean, you're always with the team, show it, like be with the team. Maybe even like chant against the Laurentiis, because it's an opinion, like you can share it or not, but it's an opinion. You can do it before and after the game, but not during the game. During the game, like you always say, because you say you are the best fans in the world, right? Then you show it, like prove it. Support the team for 90
do it,
minutes.
but also do other I mean, it's anyway. Well, let's see how this plays out, and we will be keeping you up to date as and when, because we do have you over there, or you are here, depending on who's listening and where you're listening. Right. Well, you can be found on Twitter, Michele, at Napoli Tickets. I'm at Henry Bar Culture. The show is at Shadow of Vesuvio, part of the Far From Vesuvius network at Far From Vesuvius. I hope everyone is okay, and let's keep supporting the team. See you soon, everyone. Take care. Forza Napoli.
Sempre.
Addio.